Penguin Random House Audio presents Allergic, Our Irritated Bodies in a Changing World by Theresa Macphail. Read for you by Jaime Lamchick. Prologue. Everything that irritates us. On August 25th, 1996, my dad was cruising down Main Street in our small New Hampshire town in the respectable, boxy four-door sedan that he used to make sales calls during the week. He and his longtime girlfriend, Patricia, were headed out to the beach to enjoy the day surfside. It was 11:20 a.m., and as the sun marched toward its apogee, the temperature slowly rose with it. The car's windows were rolled down, which was typical for my dad. He was an enthusiastic smoker of Marlboro Lights who also eschewed the use of air conditioning unless it was blisteringly hot. We were New Englanders, after all, and expected to tough out all but the most miserable of weather. My dad's hand dangled outside his car, a lit cigarette pinched between his fingers, his forearm resting on the warm metal of the car door. The radio was tuned in to an AM station covering the Boston Red Sox. My dad could never get enough baseball. He dialed into seemingly every game, and if one wasn't being played, then he liked to listen to analysis of past matchups and predictions about future ones. As a teenager who was more into reading Dickens and obsessing over Duran Duran, I found his enthusiasm for sports exasperating, especially his addiction to sports radio. As a rule, I would sit in the back seat, trying to concentrate on reading, my eye rolls partially hidden behind a thick paperback book. Sometimes, just to annoy him, I would root for the opposing team until he threatened to pull the car over and let his only child walk home. But in 1996, I was 24 years old. That Sunday in August, I wasn't in the car with my father. I heard about what happened from 3 sources. The state police, who informed me as next of kin that he was dead. A local funeral director I phoned to see where my father had been taken, who remembered his colleagues discussing the unusual condition of his body. And, 25 years later, Patricia, during our first conversation since my father's wake. Yet my dad was such a creature of habit that I have no trouble picturing the events as they likely unfolded. If I close my eyes, I can see him sitting in his car, a styrofoam cup of hot coffee wedged into the cup holder, his hand loosely resting on top of the wheel. Growing up, I had a strained relationship with my father. My parents divorced when I was just 2 months old, and I saw him only a few times throughout my young childhood. The tension that existed between us deepened after my mother's death in a car crash in 1986, when at 14, I moved from my hometown in rural Indiana to live with him and Patricia in suburban New Hampshire. My dad and I were what I euphemistically liked to call estranged whenever I tried to explain our familial situation to new acquaintances or friends. I had a father, and I loved him. I just never spoke to him. As my dad drove that day, a solitary bee was on its usual pollen-collecting rounds when its flight trajectory intersected with my father's open car window. The bee became confused and panicked. It stung my dad in the side of his neck, close to his ear. My dad, surprised but still calm, continued to drive. What happened next was not visible to the naked eye. Events shifted to the microscopic level, inside my father's body. Biology took over. The bee's stinger introduced its venom, a mixture of water, histamine, pheromones, enzymes, and various amino acids or proteins, underneath the thin layer of skin into the fatty tissue of my father's neck. Packed tight with blood vessels, the neck is a great circulatory site, so the venom had a unique opportunity to spread rapidly throughout my dad's body. Some of my father's immune cells, his mast cells and basophils, swiftly detected certain of the venom's components. White blood cells like mast cells and basophils are produced in our bone marrow and circulate throughout the human body, helping to fight off infection or disease by ingesting foreign or harmful materials like viruses, bacteria, and cancer cells. Mast cells can be found in the connective tissues under our skin, lining our respiratory tract and intestines, and in the tissue around our lymph nodes, nerves, and blood vessels. Basophils are found in our bloodstream. Mast cells and basophils, then, are nearly everywhere inside the human body. Their job, to dramatically simplify it, is both to begin and to amplify the severity of our immune response. Think of them as the conductors of our immune system, modulating its response by releasing various proteins and chemicals. Bee venom is not a natural substance that the human body responds particularly well to, even under normal circumstances in a non-allergic person. Bee venom is naturally hemorrhagic, meaning that it has the ability to blow apart our blood cells. Even so, bee and wasp venoms are relatively harmless in most humans, apart from causing a painful localized swelling near the injection sites. Everyone's immune cells react to venom. My father's dramatically overreacted, sending his immune system into the deadly spiral known as anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis is medically defined by the World Health Organization as a severe, life-threatening systemic hypersensitivity reaction characterized by being rapid in onset with potentially life-threatening airway, breathing, or circulatory problems. What that means in layman's terms is that my father had an underlying allergy to the bee's venom, a hypersensitivity that he tragically underestimated until it was too late. Just a few weeks prior, while in the parking lot of Walmart, my father had been stung by another bee. When he returned home, he told Patricia he wasn't feeling well and took some Benadryl, a well-known brand of antihistamine, commonly recommended for coping with milder allergic responses. Soon after, he felt better, but Patricia nagged him to see a doctor, suspecting he had an allergy to bees. My father, notoriously bad at taking care of his own physical health, he smoked too much, drank too much bourbon, and ate too many servings of prime rib, demurred. Allergic responses can strengthen over time with repeated exposures. The first time my father was stung, he may not have had more than a small welt at the site of the sting itself. The second or third time, his body's immune cells would have remembered the offending substances and reacted more swiftly and strongly, causing a proportionally larger reaction. My father's body, unbeknownst to him, was already primed to betray him. The process of anaphylaxis starts as soon as an antigen, a fancy term for any substance like bee venom that initiates an immune response, encounters and activates the mast cells and basophils in your body. My dad's mast cells and basophils began the process of anaphylaxis mere seconds after he was stung in his sedan, as soon as they came into direct contact with the venom's proteins and started emitting histamine. Histamine, an organic compound created by the body, is a key part of a normal immune response, released when cells are injured or stressed. It causes blood vessels to dilate and their walls to become more permeable, thereby making it much easier for infection-fighting white blood cells to leak out of blood vessels and move into affected areas. Histamine is also a signal to other nearby cells to release even more histamine. Think of histamine as the body's chemical alarm system. Once it goes off, it alerts your entire immune system to go into action. How does this alarm system feel within your body? Histamine acts on receptors on your organs, causing inflammation, flushing, itching, hives, and swelling. Unfortunately for my father, everything that happened next would be accelerated simply because he was still sitting upright in his car, his body's position partially obstructing the flow of deoxygenated blood returning back to his heart. The allergic surge of histamine circulating throughout his body caused my dad's veins to dilate too quickly, reducing his blood pressure and the flow of blood to his heart even further, a process that can, and in my father's case eventually did, culminate in cardiac arrest. The excess of histamine additionally shifted fluid from his vascular system, the network of blood vessels throughout his body, into his tissues, causing my father's body, including his neck, to swell. In an effort to help protect the lower airways from inhaled irritants, histamine also thickens mucus, increases mucus production, and causes the smooth muscle tissue around your lungs to tighten. During an anaphylactic event, your airways begin to constrict within minutes. My father, sensing all of this beginning to happen to him, pulled over to the side of the road and asked Patricia to drive. Panicked and miles away from the nearest hospital, Patricia decided to drive to a local pharmacy for more immediate help. Now in the passenger seat, my father started.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?